The following cases are some of the wildest and most dramatic moments caught by courtroom cameras. Diana Lovejoy. Diana Lovejoy faced charges of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder in court for a failed murder-for-hire plot that targeted her soon-to-be ex-husband in 2016. Known for her YouTube videos on cooking before her arrest, Lovejoy was accused of hiring her gun instructor, Weldon McDavid Jr., to carry out the shooting. The incident occurred during Lovejoy's contentious divorce with her husband Greg Mulvihill. As part of the final agreement, Mulvihill was required to pay Lovejoy $120,000. In the courtroom in Vista, San Diego, Lovejoy awaited the jury's verdict. Tension filled the air as the forewoman announced her guilt. Lovejoy's shock was palpable. Her eyes widened, and she looked at her defense attorney in horror. Stunned and aghast, she leaned back in her seat with closed eyes, struggling to process the unfolding events. Given the cold-blooded nature of the crime she had just been convicted of, what happened next was unexpected. Lovejoy's body went limp, and she fell to the side. Swiftly caught and lifted back into her seat by a prison guard, Lovejoy appeared in a catatonic state, with her head rolling uncontrollably. Despite attempts to get her into a standing position, Lovejoy collapsed to the ground, eyes fixed open. Placed in the recovery position, she received medical attention from a present doctor who suspected she might be suffering from shock. However, prosecutor Jody Breton expressed skepticism, considering Lovejoy's history of orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot. Lovejoy was taken from the court to an awaiting ambulance on a stretcher. After recovering from what ER doctors deemed a fainting episode, she returned to court. Subsequently, Lovejoy was sentenced to 26 years to life for her crimes. Leonid Greiser. I'm trying to think over here. I'd like to know where they got that photo of me with my short hair. Do they have access to Google? Questioned Leonid Greiser, currently on trial in Russia for the stabbing death of his own sister, Ariana Karol. The 18-year-old confessed to the brutal murder after being arrested by police in Moscow, claiming that Satan had ordered him to commit the act. Greiser, a dangerous criminal, is confined to a secure glass box in Shabinsky District Court during the trial to ensure the safety of guards, court employees, and other civilians. As he approaches the narrow open panel of the box, a short verbal exchange occurs with the courtroom guard. However, Greiser suddenly stops, and an idea dawns on him. With an air of intent and determination, Greiser attempts to escape by stooping down and putting his hands through the narrow horizontal window, hoping to pull his upper body through. However, his head is too large to fit. Undeterred, he leans back and swings his right leg out of the window, aiming to exit feet first. A female guard intervenes, grabbing his leg, but Greiser continues to plan his escape. Looking toward the ceiling of the box for an alternative route, Greiser's intentions become clearer. The male courtroom officer diverts his attention and engages in a conversation to calm him down. Just when it seems that peace is restored, Greiser takes an unbelievable turn, jumping onto the low bench in the box and squeezing his way up through an extremely narrow gap between the ceiling slats. Officers stand by seemingly unconcerned, but as Greiser's head displaces a styrofoam ceiling tile, they realize the severity of the situation and spring into action. 3 officers attempt to climb up to reach him, but Greiser continues moving upwards, even as his pants come off in the struggle. More guards arrive for backup, with one brandishing a taser near Greiser's leg. Despite the chaos, Greiser lowers himself back into the box, pulling his pants up, and the hearing continues with him in handcuffs to prevent further escape attempts. Found guilty of the murder, Greiser expressed no regrets during sentencing and was mandated to undergo psychiatric medical treatment. The escape attempt showcased his determination, triggered by the impending threat of imprisonment. Daniel Nicholson. In Christie's Beach Magistrates Court in Adelaide, South Australia, 35-year-old Daniel Nicholson faced a bail hearing related to weapons offences and driving charges. With a history of petty crime and drug use, Nicholson, high on methamphetamines, attended court for a bail decision by Magistrate Sue O'Connor. Shockingly, as the magistrate announced the revocation of Nicholson's bail, he stood up, pleading with hands in the air, expecting to leave court on bail again. However, things took a dramatic turn. Despite the judge's orders to sit down, Nicholson became increasingly irate. A sheriff's officer entered the dock to control the situation, but Nicholson, displaying seemingly superhuman strength, attempted to climb over the glass panel. In the struggle that followed, officers tried to restrain him, leading to a chaotic scene in the courtroom. Nicholson's supporters stormed into the courtroom from the hall outside, with one woman holding Nicholson's young son, pleading for mercy. The struggle continued across the courtroom floor, resulting in injuries to 2 sheriff's officers. Eventually, Nicholson was restrained, handcuffed, and jailed for at least 12 months due to the escape attempt. The judge, addressing Nicholson, urged him to grow up, get clean, or face additional years behind bars. While attempts to escape imprisonment can be explained, actions like Nicholson's may lead to severe consequences. Christopher Teal. Christopher Teal's courtroom behavior was perplexing and bizarre as he faced charges of rape and unlawful imprisonment before Superior Judge Karen Donahue in a King County courtroom in Seattle. The 26-year-old was accused of following a woman into a car dealership bathroom, locking her in a stall, and sexually assaulting her. The incident was halted by dealership employees who intervened, pulling Teal, who stood at 6 feet 3 inches tall, off the victim. Teal's conduct in custody had been erratic, marked by violent incidents, including an attempt to headbutt a detective during questioning about the car dealership incident. A psychiatric evaluation raised doubts about Teal feigning symptoms of a psychiatric disorder. In court for a competency hearing, Teal's demeanor was bewildering as he entered the courtroom in a seemingly dazed state. Watch as Teal's handcuffs are removed and he looks around confusedly. During the hearing, Teal reaches out towards his defense attorney, Reed Birkland, prompting a court officer to restrain him. Unexpectedly, Teal laughs and then slaps Birkland sharply. Court officers swiftly intervene, bringing Teal to the ground, eventually reapplying handcuffs. Teal's tumultuous behavior continued 2 weeks later during another competency hearing. This time, officers took precautions, wheeling him into court strapped into a restraint chair. Despite interruptions and nonsensical questions from Teal about his mugshot, he was eventually deemed competent to stand trial. Found guilty, Teal was sentenced to 8.5 years to life for his crimes. Alexis Plunkett. Alexis Plunkett, a qualified criminal defense and civil rights attorney in Las Vegas, Nevada, found herself in a bizarre legal situation. Accused of conspiracy to unlawfully possess a cell phone by a prisoner, Plunkett had allegedly given her phone to her boyfriend, Andrew Aravalo, who was also her client, during a jail visit 2 years prior. These felony charges carried a potential prison sentence of up to a year. Plunkett's questionable judgment took a darker turn when text messages were discovered on her seized phone. In these messages, she claimed to have ordered a hit on Aravalo and concluded with the words, "Delete this," and a smiling emoji. When confronted by another attorney about the seriousness of such statements, Plunkett insisted she wasn't joking, citing a threat from Aravalo that he would have her killed. During the court proceedings, Judge Michael Villani expressed his disbelief at the bizarre situation, emphasizing the unprecedented nature of such actions. Despite the prosecution's request for Plunkett to be held in custody, she was released on bond. However, Plunkett's pattern of poor judgment continued, leading to further legal trouble. She faced additional charges of intimidating a witness after making a social media post referring to a potential witness as a snitch. The prosecution sought to deny her bond, highlighting the nature of the text messages previously mentioned. Judge Villani agreed with the prosecution. In the end, Plunkett entered into a plea deal, pleading guilty to 1 count of possession of a telecom device by a prisoner. In exchange, the charges of intimidating a witness were dropped. Plunkett received a sentence of 3 years probation, a 5-year prohibition from practicing law, and permanent disbarment by the Nevada Supreme Court. Alexis Plunkett faced significant consequences for her actions, paying a heavy price for her involvement in providing a phone to her boyfriend in jail. Keysone Wilkins. Keysone Wilkins emerged as one of the most dramatic courtroom figures while representing himself in an Ohio trial facing multiple charges of assault and weapons violations related to a 2004 shooting. The first day of the trial was marked by Wilkins's dramatic antics, leading the judge to clear the courtroom multiple times. As day 2 began, the judge inquired if Wilkins had any witnesses present. Wilkins responded in the negative, requesting more time to prepare his defense. The judge, unyielding, reminded him that he had ample time to prepare and research the matter. Unwilling to grant additional time, the hearing proceeded. During the cross-examination by the prosecution, Wilkins stunned everyone by falling to the ground. Court deputies rushed to his aid, but the judge, familiar with Wilkins's penchant for drama, remained composed and called for the courtroom to be cleared once again. Despite deputies lifting him back into his chair and a nurse finding nothing wrong, Wilkins sat slumped, seemingly unconscious. In a bizarre turn, the deputy waved smelling salts under Wilkins's nose, prompting a sudden and miraculous recovery from his feigned heart attack. The judge continued with the hearing as Wilkins sat with his head thrown back, reprimanding him for continued disruptive behavior. Despite being declared healthy, Wilkins was eventually wheeled out of court in a wheelchair. Wilkins's dramatic conduct didn't work in his favor, and he was sentenced to 42 years in prison. Alan McCarty. Alan McCarty's story unfolds outside the courtroom amid a contentious child custody dispute with his ex-wife. Fueled by frustration, McCarty erroneously blames Circuit Court Judge Stasho Warren for the situation. In an enraged state, McCarty contacts the Volusia County Sheriff's Office in Florida, expressing his grievances and making alarming threats. He claims that if his kids are not returned, he will resort to violence, even mentioning having a gun pointed at the building. Law enforcement intervenes, apprehending McCarty and charging him with making threats against a sitting judge. During a pre-trial hearing, it becomes evident that McCarty's volatile nature persists. Upon entering the courtroom, he launches into a profanity-laden tirade, expressing anger and resentment towards the judge. When asked to swear an oath, McCarty resists, asserting unconstitutional practices. The courtroom exchanges escalate, leading to McCarty being ordered out of the court by Judge Foxman. Throughout the trial, McCarty's outbursts persist, resulting in him spending a significant portion of the proceedings in a separate room. Judge Foxman eventually sentences him to 20 years in prison for threatening the judge, and an additional 10 days in jail for disruptive behavior during the trial. Notably, the original threats were directed at Judge Warren, who wasn't the presiding judge in the custody case. Moreover, it is revealed that McCarty did not have custody of the children, despite insulting numerous individuals involved in the legal process, including his own public defender. McCarty's mother attends the sentencing hearing and expresses apologies for her son's courtroom behavior. Spencer Boston faced legal repercussions for bringing something into the courtroom that was prohibited, but for entirely different reasons. Boston appeared before Judge Haywood Berry on relatively minor charges related to being stopped for speeding, where officers discovered a small amount of marijuana in his possession. As his case was called, Boston approached the podium, unbuttoning his jacket to reveal a vibrant tie-dye t-shirt. Despite having a defense attorney, Boston expressed his desire to represent himself. While standing patiently, Boston voiced strong opinions about the unfairness of marijuana laws. He asserted that marijuana is a harmless drug with a long history, dating back to the 80s and 90s. Judge Berry acknowledged the potential unfairness of the law, but redirected the hearing to inquire if Boston wanted to face trial for the offenses. When Boston confirmed his desire for trial, the judge initiated the necessary bureaucratic procedures. However, Boston took a bold and audacious turn. Seemingly unnoticed by court officers, he reached into his jacket pockets and pulled out a joint, putting it into his mouth. This audacious act resulted in Boston facing additional charges of disorderly conduct, contempt of court, and a second charge for possession of marijuana. In a subsequent interview, Boston explained how he managed to smuggle the joint into court without detection by taping it to his chest. For his boldness, Boston spent 10 days in court for contempt before being released on a $3,000 bond. Which of these courtroom cases did you find the most shocking? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this.